And hello, and welcome to the series finale for
Yes.
Sofia by Night. I have my players, Jen and Matt,
Mhm.
and it has been a great ride. This game really started
Yes.
off as I had not run a tabletop RPG in years. I had done some play by email games with Matt and a couple
Yeah.
That
friends.
sounds hard.
It was. I mean, because there
Yeah.
Yeah.
wasn't there wasn't the ability to, to stream or to do these kinds
Right.
of things. So I mean, honestly, the cheapest and easiest way for us to do it was through posting. Um,
Hmm.
and I had a game that was set in Philadelphia that we did mostly through that, starting in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then had a game in New Orleans that was done that way. But Sophia
Was
by
that the
Night,
Sabbat game?
yep, it was the
It was the
Sabak
Sabbat
game.
game. And
Yep.
Dave, my buddy Dave was a part of that. He played the Malkavian girl or
Hmm.
something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And
I
Sophia,
don't remember what I played in that.
I don't honestly remember either. Maybe a
Yeah, me
Nosferatu.
neither. Probably, but I
Maybe.
don't. I don't remember. Yeah.
um, Interestingly enough, though, there is a character from that game who is now going to be in Blood in the Water.
Neat.
Okay.
And I'll just leave it at that. So,
Okay.
because it's a secret. Um,
Don't spoil anything for Jen.
I won't. I won't. I won't. But Sophia by Night really was a game that I first ran for our group in Pennsylvania. The Dark Ages game came out, and I was just intrigued with it because I mean, first off, it was a different setting for Vampire, um,
Yeah.
and we there was about three or four of us played. We only really
Hmm.
played a couple times. We really
Yeah.
didn't
That's
get
true.
too far, but everybody loved the Prince. I
Prince Sergei was cool.
Prince Sergei, yeah, he was more of what they'd call fish milk now. I mean, he was the
Yeah.
overly silly prince, and I kind of like to think I made him a little more psychotic now, but in kind of a cold psychotic. Um,
Hmm.
but one thing that always stood out to me is I always remember Matt's character Praetor, and it was
Hmm.
always such a good character concept that we never really got to finish.
Yeah.
And I am proud to say that we were able to finish this chronicle. A lot of times we all start games, we have great ideas, and it falls apart. Somebody moves, somebody can't play anymore, somebody rage
Yeah.
quits, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I'm really proud and happy that you guys were able to stick with the game. These every Wednesdays. We started last May, I believe. So
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was it, it
Yeah.
was it was May something we started, and we had a
Mm.
couple weeks in a row where we couldn't play. Circumstances came up,
Yeah.
but we finished it, and I'm very happy you guys stuck with it. Um, I want to thank Eric, Mr. Claudio Perez,
Yeah.
who
Hmm.
had started the game with us. I was really going to try to see if I could get him to show up for one last game, and come back in, and I thought that might just throw a total monkey wrench into everything at this
Oh,
point. So
well,
Probably
yeah.
would,
yeah,
obviously.
yeah, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I'd had a chance to invite him. But yeah, I mean, it was really just three players in the beginning and just two, but I think it worked out really well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to make sure I kind of had enough time for you guys to be able to develop your characters.
Right.
You
Right.
know, um, one thing I would like to do is we are
Hmm.
going to skip ahead 5 years,
Okay.
and we are going to start again on, of course, it's Sophia by Night, so it has to be a cold night. Um, and we are going to find the characters. They're in different circumstances. But first, I'd like to ask, and we'll start with Praetor. Where would he be 5 years following the events of the game?
Um. Initially, he would start off looking into anything for his past, what Turville might have had available.
Mm,
Uh, Not knowing what Turville may or may not have kept, if he kept any notes or anything about the whole thing. I expect not, because my whole background that I wrote up was that he was kind of embraced as a quick, like, I need a body. And he wasn't from Sofia. So Turville just grabbed the first kind of available orphan or whatever that he found and took Praetor in. I had a name for him, and I wrote it down somewhere, but I can't find it at the moment.
Yeah.
But what he would hope to do is ingratiate himself with the prince or the powers that be, particularly probably Bishop Petrov.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on what happens with Petrov, I mean, if he's going off gallivanting after Gangrel, he could be in a lot of trouble. So he would try to help. He would want to be helping Petrov, or if it came down to it, he would want Petrov's position. He's the sheriff, if I'm right, right?
Seneschal.
Seneschal. So yeah, he would want to be the right hand of the prince.
Okay.
He would eventually want to get there. Like, I think sheriff is lower if they even have that in the Dark Ages.
Don't.
But like,
they don't now.
Yeah, he would want to eventually be that right hand to the prince.
Okay.
Now, initially, that's what he'd want, to be somebody important enough that you can't just take him out without getting somebody like the prince angry. But it depends on how psychotic / crazy whatever Prince Sergei actually ends up being. If he sees more like chaotic like behavior, Praetor's much more of a lawful bent, and he might be like, I'm not so sure. He would want to be involved in the Cainite society, and he would certainly want to be like present at any important functions, whatever. But he would still, as far as like, he'd also want to see what the fallout would be of his own clan. Like, how do they feel about him after he kills his sire? Granted, the prince gave him the right of destruction, but it was pretty clear, like, the Nosferatu powers that be didn't want him killed. They didn't really say why, but they didn't want him dead. And Praetor would be like, it depends on if they let him live long enough to at least be useful, if they don't come after him for that. But otherwise, depending on what the prince and the seneschal, Bishop Petrov, end up needing or doing, he'd be also fine with just simply existing in doing a trade business. He knows that Tervel imported a lot of religious and historical artifacts. That's not really his bent anymore. So as far as like 5 years from now, it depends on what happens, but he would want to go for being somebody important to the prince as his primary goal. Somebody who would be at least the prince could rely on, like as a man who gets things done, not afraid to go out there and use his sword if need be.
Okay. That sounds good. And Iskra?
Iskra probably goes back to her clan now that she feels very welcomed after everything she's done, finally, and she would go there, probably spend most of her time there, but will come back, and if Praetor's around, like go over and say hi or whatever, that kind of thing. I think at some point she's still going to want to burn down that church because that is the cause of a lot of her suffering as a vampire, because the story I had written before we started was that she was part of a church that was not Christian, it was pagan, and they were worshiping a goddess. And all of the acolytes were girls whose parents sent them there to keep them safe. Okay. And there's one priest, and he was the only one that was allowed to say the goddess's name, and Iskra has forgotten whatever that may have been. So she was like the one that would cook breakfast, a simple breakfast, to light the candles before she, at night, so people coming in could, have a votive there for their loved one, this sort of thing. And that's where Patia found her. But previous to that, there were crosses in the church, and we were told it keeps the vampires away. So after waking up as a vampire, Iskra decided this was all a lie. They can't go on deceiving people like this. It really messed her up. That's why the whole game she can't look at crosses and kind of doesn't want to look at Petra of the bishop and all of that, because that's what was ingrained in her. And the reason she was there is because she had an older sister, about 5 years older than her, and her sister got married, was happy, got pregnant, died in childbirth, and her parents were never the same, and they decided this is never going to happen to us again, and dropped off Iskra at the church as an acolyte. So that was like her life for a while, but now that she knows it's all a lie, she's gonna rage out and burn it probably if she gets the opportunity.
Would would Batia know all this or not?
Oh, she'd tell Patia all this, absolutely.
I really doubt Patia would let her rage and burn down a church.
Yeah, but she can at least talk it out, So
I had toyed around with letting you do it, but it seemed like kind of a sour ending. So
yeah. I mean, I get that, but that's where Iskra's head has been through a lot of this,
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
That's also why she was so I don't know, sullen, I guess, because she lost her sister. She essentially lost her family when she became a vampire, and then she lost her servant who she was bonded with, and you get to that point you want to burn something down, so yeah.
well, on a cold, chilly evening, Iskra and Praetor find themselves crossing paths outside the thick sheep.
That's fair.
Yeah, that seems about right.
And
Hello.
Good evening, Iskra.
I assume you're here for the same reason I am. Hungry.
It's a nice place to find something to eat.
It is.
Care to share a vagrant? So.
Yeah. Wait till he falls asleep and then...
Sure. So, how have you been?
I've survived. And that is all I can say for now. You?
Doing well. Doing well. Nice to be accepted in my clan again.
Praetor says nothing. Just kind of nods.
Well, you know how it
nice
was. I mean, I was kind of abandoned for a while, so
Yes.
yeah.
A piece of news just recently came to you, and it was something that involved the night where Turville was executed. You found out some information about who that next guest who was arriving. And apparently they were an emissary from Hamburg, Germany.
Oh.
And from what you've heard, they were looking for Hildegard.
That's why she left.
Huh. I never learned much about Hildegard.
Well, she told me things I don't know if I'm allowed to reveal. But
That's up
you're
to you.
trustworthy. Well, you're trustworthy, so I know you're not going to spread this to everyone.
Trust the Nosferatu.
This one I have reason to trust.
I told the Nosferatu. You did what?
Pardon the pus. No.
Yeah.
Oh God.
No. Different character entirely.
Yeah, different.
Much more a slime ball, literally.
Yeah. She didn't really want to talk about her sire right off. I think you found her first. Yeah, I think you found her at the church that I couldn't go near. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and then later we were talking when we were out for several nights, climbing buildings and things like that.
Running across rooftops.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And she was real hesitant to mention what clan she was from or what had happened or where her sire had gone or why he wasn't there. And eventually she, and I don't know if this is true or if she just wanted me to stop asking things, but she said that she killed him. Apparently he'd done some very bad things to her that she was not willing to talk about.
Well, I can certainly sympathize.
Yeah, you probably can. Probably different ways, but yeah. So
I can certainly understand why she'd be reluctant to talk about it if she killed him without proper, I guess.
I think she just reacted. I think
Yeah.
I don't know all the details, but Yeah.
If the stress upon her was too much, or he went to the well once too often to her or
Mm.
use her, then I
Mm-hmm.
can certainly understand why she might have rebelled against his
Right. Right.
control.
But
But
officially, I don't know this, and neither do you.
unofficially, yeah, unofficially, of course, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I will say nothing, of course.
Right.
So, well, that's good to
Yeah.
know. Hopefully, we.
She's in such trouble, though.
It seems likely. I mean, after all, if the prince was dealing with whatever she had done then, it's now coming around again years later.
Right. That's why she fled.
And I'm
That's
going
just
to.
that note I can't read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can
Hmm.
you read now?
No, I don't see a need for it. I got this
Yeah.
far.
Who needs books?
Yeah.
They're just going to burn them in a couple of years when they can actually print them. So,
Yeah. Right.
okay, I am going to give you guys, unless you got something
Hmm.
else,
No.
I'm going to give you guys chances to make one more set of rolls.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I would like you each, now let me just describe it first. You are
Hmm.
going to be making a wits and survival rolls, difficulty 5. You're going to get to
Okay.
each roll 3 times. And if
Okay.
you get 10 successes combined, you will be able to decide Hildegard's fate.
Oh. Okay.
So
Okay.
let
Interesting.
So
me.
it was wits
Wits and
and
survival, yes. Yep. And
okay.
you're going to get to roll 3 times
Oh,
each.
that's
So,
that's a misclick. I
okay,
just
that's
missed
fine.
entirely.
Yep.
Okay, survival. Where the heck is there? It is. Okay, so that's survival.
Okay, so that's
And
3. Oh, no, that was on
I
its
got
own.
subterfuge. Nope,
Yeah,
wrong
yeah.
one.
wait, hold on. I'm having trouble with the buttons, but
How
we'll
long
get
have we been
there.
playing this?
I know. It's the size of this little tiny thing
Yeah.
that's the problem. Okay, I rolled
All
something.
Okay.
So that's
right.
So
one.
we got let's see.
I got
So
3 on mine.
okay, so we have 4 so far. Okay, good.
Oh,
So
Okay.
not
then you
bad.
guys roll
So
them again.
we rolled 2 more times?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so survival. Oops. Okay, I thought I screwed
Trying
that
to
up.
get
Hold on.
stealth.
That's a miss. If that's me, that's a misclick.
That's a misclick,
Nope,
yep.
I got it. I
Yep.
got 3 on that one
Okay.
as well.
Okay, so we have
And
7
survival.
so
Okay,
far.
that
Yep.
should be
All right, we got 10.
Yep.
okay.
Yay! We don't even need to go to the third round.
You do not. Okay. Um, you will, one of you will just say,
Mhm.
received a letter from Hildegard. And it
Okay.
It would
says,
be me it would have to be me 'cause she can't
probably,
read.
yeah.
She knows I can't
Yeah.
read. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
she would
says,
send it to me.
this is my friend. I am writing to you from an undisclosed location. Though I've eluded my hunters for now, I know that cannot be far behind. I'm pleased you are well. Pray for me if you still believe in any kind of divine being, that I might find peace as well.
Yeah, you're barking up the wrong tree here.
Yeah, kind of.
We don't know. Maybe she found Jesus while she was gone. Who knows?
Yeah,
So,
right.
I suppose it's possible.
And unless you really want to know what would have happened otherwise, we can just leave it.
Yeah.
How about we'll save that for the Q&A?
Yeah.
That if you really
Okay.
want to know what would have happened.
Okay. Yeah.
And that is all I have.
Okay.
So what I would like to do now is, this episode is called All Secrets Known. So this is where the players can ask questions about things that happen in the game, and I will scan through my notes and try to answer as honestly as I possibly can. So whoever wants to go first, if you have something, let me know.
You have anything, Jen,
What
right away?
what eventually happened to Matthias? We know he was, in his house, and then we didn't hear anything.
Yeah.
Did
He went
someone
crazy.
come and get him? Did he go crazy? Did he off himself? Did he run away? What happened to him?
He went crazy. He probably eventually would have been picked up by the local authorities. Somebody eventually would have seen him murdering people or heard something. My plan was always that he was going to be picked up by the city guard and probably hung or something as a murderer. So.
Yeah, but a follow-up to that is, who did that to him? How did he get changed from this person trying to
be very righteous.
Yeah, and then suddenly
Yeah.
going to a homicidal maniac. Who was responsible for that change? Something happened to him, but we don't know who that was.
One of the elders, probably Alexander.
Okay, because he
Okay.
was religious, and that kind of
Right.
encroached on Alexander's territory, as it were, metaphorically
He
speaking.
was Matthias was a fall guy.
Okay. Well, I kind of figured he would be like he was a rallying point to like, hey, I'm the distraction,
Mm-hmm.
and people were then sending resources to go
Yeah.
deal with him, which
Right,
left him
right.
then possibly distracted for other things.
Well, he was always, there's evil in the neighborhood. We must
Yeah.
stop the evil, and it was an attempt to make him look like he was the evil. And
Right.
with his death, then everything's good. So basically, Masquerade wiped clean.
Yeah, kept intact.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was going to be the scapegoat for all the bad things.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that was then somebody putting that plan into action, like, okay, he served his purpose. Now let's get rid of the tool.
Correct.
Okay. I got another question.
Okay. Sure.
Unless you. Okay. Early on, the brothel got attacked, and a woman came in through the window that ended up being bound, and we were trying to get information out of her, and that was where Iskra first staked another vampire at the request of her sire. What happened to her?
She's still in a box, as far as I know.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
You guys never went back to see her. I believe. I think Claudio took.
I thought he took the crate. Took her.
Took the crate to his sires. And you guys never saw her again. But nope, she's still sitting there, staked.
Okay. All right.
It shows you why you can't trust the Ventru.
And she could have been a font of information. She was involved with the gangrel, so she might have been able to give you some information about them. And just as another tidbit, you may have heard me mention the term "the circle of the crone."
I heard that. Yeah, I remember that. I thought that was a Nosferatu thing, though.
It is actually from Vampire the Requiem.
Okay.
It was a faction that they had in there. They were more of a pagan group. That is, so I liked that idea from Requiem, and I brought them in, and they were a whole group. They were up in the mountains. You guys never ventured up there. I asked you several times if you guys wanted to venture out of the city into the mountains. You guys never went.
Well, see, Iskra had a reason not to, though, because
I agree.
she knew that
being a city boy, he wasn't going up there.
he wasn't going to go anywhere. But like I think Hildegard was trying to suggest to Iskra we should go out there, and Iskra had met Alexander and knew Alexander's feelings about people who are pagan, and was like, if he catches me out there, I'm in big trouble. So that's why she didn't go.
Yep. But she was part of that whole group.
Yeah, we just never looked at that because it A, outside the city, and B, gangrel. C, werewolves. We don't want to mess with them.
Oh, go ahead.
We were afraid of werewolves. I mean, we thought there could be some out there, and it was all like
There
rumor and unsubstantiated. Yeah. But we're gonna get our butts handed to us when we're dealing with werewolves. So
right.
I mean, with Iskra and Claudio being like, no, we're not leaving the city. Praetor was kind of like, well, all right,
And
I'm never going to convince them. I'm not going to try.
and for the most part, you were safer inside the city walls. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Mostly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jen, anything else for you?
Let me think for a minute. That was just off the top of my head. What other things didn't?
Well, I have one.
Go
ahead.
Go.
Stefan. Who did whatever they did to Stefan?
Okay, Iskra was there for that.
I was like, because his head blew up, and we had somebody trying to get his, trying to read his mind or whatever. But somebody put that brain lock or whatever on it and prevented that. So that's what I was like, who did that? Who could have done that?
Okay, so that was when Iskra couldn't fix Stefan, she brought him to Patia and kind of explained what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Patia brought
Yeah.
in some women that Iskra had never seen before who did all kinds of strange things, and uh,
Yeah.
got into Stefan's head a little bit. I think the name Alexander came up, if I remember correctly, and then there was supposed to be something more back there, and she wanted to try and go after that, but it failed horribly, and he just
Right.
died
Yep.
Yeah, but
slowly.
somebody put that block on
Yeah, it would have been
Stefan that
Alexander, we think, but we don't know
was
for
it.
sure.
It was
It
Yeah, it
Alexander.
was.
was.
Yep.
Okay, which
Yeah.
leads me to then, how was Alexander involved in the conspiracy between Turval and Matthias, not Matthias, the wizard?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, I'm blanking on his name right now. Demetrius?
Yep.
Demetrius.
Yep. This
Yeah,
is
but we know it was Turval, Demetrius, and Alexander was involved with the gangrel, but we knew kind of the other three parts, and Turval didn't know how Alexander was involved, other than he was involved, but that's all we got out of him on that. So, what was Alexander's role in that conspiracy?
he was using Demetrius to bring in artifacts from Constantinople. He had been Alexander had spent a lot of time in Constantinople, and some of his history ties into there was a module called Constantinople by Night,
Yeah, I remember
where
that.
where there was some really powerful figures who were almost religious figures in Constantinople, and Alexander always thought he was, like chosen by God to
God's gift.
Exactly. And what he was trying to do was recover artifacts from the war, things to keep them out of the hands of the heathens.
Yeah, the pagans,
Yeah.
especially in Constantinople.
Yeah. And he really kind of had his eyes set on maybe eventually becoming prince in Sofia, and really was kind of using other people to bring the other clans down, try to sow chaos, and really just kind of keep his name out of it.
Right.
I was not surprised that you did not mention his name to the prince.
Yeah, because that's something Praetor was like. He was going to investigate that on his own privately,
Yeah.
but carefully. Like, okay, I know one thing. Well, Iskra and I know one thing that nobody else seems to know. To Iskra, it may not mean much, but to Praetor, that's a secret that at least he could use later on, if need be, against his or with his clan or against what was he, Toreador?
Yeah.
Yeah, or against them as like, look, I know something you don't, and here it is. So yeah, I left his name out of it simply for my own benefit and investigation. Well, yeah, but I didn't figure the prince needed to know this because I had a very tenuous connection to him, and he was very careful about leaving his name out of it. The only reason I think he got his name mentioned was Turval was tortured.
Exactly.
So, and at the hands of Iskra, which, yay, you did good. But yeah, it's something like he was not going to mention to the prince, not without at least having more proof other than the confession of a man under pain.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he had no reason to lie, yet he lied at every turn. So,
Yeah.
If it had gotten back to Alexander that you had spoken his name to the prince, good chance Praetor would have gotten whacked.
Well, that was the other thing too. Yeah, I figured he's been keeping his name very carefully out of things, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And we know he was tied into staking the two elders, Bruja and what Petrov is a Ventru?
Yeah, Lasombra.
Oh, Lasombra. Yeah. So two high-ranking members of the city, the elders. So I'm a neonate. I don't stand a chance in hell.
Well played.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I did that deliberately and carefully because, like, and again, what he would do is at least, like, he might look at Alexander, like, look into his stuff and, like, be like, okay, how is this connected? And if he was, the more he looks, the cleaner Alexander looks. That's suspicious to Praetor. Be like, no, nobody's this clean.
Yeah.
So. But he would have kept that as a secret, like, okay, hopefully I can find a way to leverage this somehow if I need it. But yeah, otherwise he wouldn't have said a darn thing to anyone else. Iskra would have known it, but I don't know that she would have seen its importance or value in the same way Praetor would have.
No, she would have
Just that,
completely missed that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that whole time frame, she was.
Yeah.
right. She was busy with
Yeah.
other thoughts and like,
Yeah.
oh wait, Alexander was involved, and that to Praetor was like, ding ding ding, somebody important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she's
Oh,
kind of afraid of him because he's all like religious and
He's all religious. Praetor
and
is
she
not.
can't really think well around him. So
Yeah,
You-
she gets too nervous and flustered, and Praetor is just like, okay, this is the bishop or what else, holy man or whatever. He's at least in charge of something religious here,
Well, he
but
is.
not a
Yeah.
concern for him.
Yeah, he is.
Right, right.
I mean, because there's really only 4 elders of the clans, and he is one of them. And as much as you guys have received accolades and those kinds of things, you didn't have the leverage to go against an elder. So
No,
yeah,
Right.
so that was another reason. Like I
Yeah.
said, clearly,
And-
like he's involved, but we have no proof and no way to use it.
Yep.
The only
Yeah.
thing Praetor would have said was, or done with it, is if something came around and like, well, I happen to know something about this conspiracy that happened weeks, days, months, years ago, and I know that what's his name, Alexander was involved.
yeah.
Excuse me. So he would have saved that as a last ditch effort to save his arse.
Yeah. If you had, I did have a scene ready. That's why I said unless you
Yeah,
did
no.
something
He's
really stupid.
only using that as a last ditch, trump card
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
no, wait, no.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Okay.
The only other thing I would question then would be like, we did the scene where he survives. What happens? Like, does somebody approach Praetor about Turvel's death? Does somebody come to him like, you need to be on your watch, or we've ostracized you, or whatever? What befalls him from Turvel's death, if anything?
The clan probably would not have necessarily kicked him out, but he would have been considered less than trustworthy. He's not quite to the point where they're going to be like, you're out, you're Kaitif, but
Yeah.
he is basically an outcast among outcasts.
Which suits him fine,
Yeah.
honestly, because if they're going, the way he was unfortunately brought up, if they're going to act like that, I mean, Turvel, essentially, as far as he's concerned, it would have been like, all right, well, fine, I'll make my own way because I'm a stubborn son of a bitch. Unfortunately, Turvel did his job perhaps a little too well
Right.
in filling his head with these tales of being a Praetorian guard.
Yeah.
He turned a lowly peasant into an LG paladin type.
Yeah. No.
And it kind of bit him in the ass in the end, literally.
It did, but
wow.
you had a chance to develop the character. And
You're right. I never
tested.
got much chance to do with him in the other game because
Well, yeah.
I don't think we played more than half a dozen times.
We really didn't, and it was hey, fight, attack things, and
Yeah. I don't even remember who else was it. Heather and John and me.
John and maybe Joe, I think.
Oh yeah, probably Joe.
And honestly, I can't remember who played what. I remember you played Praetor,
Yeah.
and that's it.
I had Praetor the Nosferatu.
Heather might have
Praetorian guard.
played a Toreador. JB, I don't know.
That was her go-to.
yeah,
JB had no go-to. He just played whatever.
And Joe.
And same with Joe, actually.
Well, Joe usually played the character that nobody expected, because you remember he played a Nosferatu in Philadelphia. Mr. Mouchley.
And John Mouchley. Mr.
Yep.
Mouchley.
Yep.
Yep.
No, so
Which I still got angry over him because he picked a name that was like out of computer history. Mouchley was one of the guys who helped develop ENIAC.
Yep.
So
Oh,
Joe.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah.
Joe.
Well, nobody did till I looked it up later. I happened to come across it in one of my computer textbooks when I was in college.
Yeah.
I was flipping around and I saw a picture of the guy with the ENIAC, and it's like, oh, John Mouchley. I'm like, you little shit. And Joe was he laughed all the way to the banquet. And he's like, nobody got that. I'm like, yeah, but I'm studying computers. I was eventually going to find it, Joe.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. But that was Joe. That was always Joe. He would always have these little things that'd be like, oh wait, when Prism screamed in the dark,
Yes.
scared the shit out of everybody.
Yep. Alrighty.
I have another
right.
question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did Stefan have a family? Iskra never got a chance to talk to him about his family or his background.
No, no, it's funny. Again, he was, thug number two or something like
Right.
that.
Yes.
And no, I mean, probably not. I mean, he might have been from a farming, family, and came to the big city to end up working as thug number two. But no, and if he did, he just never really described it. He was just, just in thrall.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess so.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see, what else am I missing?
I'm pretty much okay at this point. Like I said, Praetor would have gone on to try to make himself useful among his kind, particularly those that are in power. But the prince and Bishop Petrov. Other than that, he wouldn't care about his own clan. As far as he's concerned, they're a bunch of a-holes, as it were. Honorless, shiftless layabouts.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Trying to remember things.
Yeah.
The tunnels. That was just a smuggling network, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And that was used by the Nosferatu, and the Volos, his men, were using the tunnels, because there was a scene where you guys came to a door and you knocked on it, and there was some guys there waiting for shipments, and that was
Right.
that was a group of his men. So
Okay.
How many
early
many
on.
Nosferatu are there? We had Batia, and we had the Flunky, and then me and Turvel. So that's 4. That's more than a lot of the other clans have already.
yeah, they never really stated their numbers, although somehow they were given permission to embrace, because a lot of kindred died in the Tremere War,
Right.
because it eventually spilled into Sofia. So the clans that had kind of suffered the most were the Nosferatu, the Bruja, and the Ventru. Now, no one ever seemed to think the Ventru were low on numbers, but somehow they finagled getting a chance to add to their numbers.
Yeah.
Petrov couldn't really plead for the La Sombra because he was a bishop. I mean, he was a seneschal, but no one really wanted them to expand either. So that was one reason he got staked. The Bruja.
Well, wasn't he the only one?
Yeah, which essentially left no La Sombra.
Right. Which he helped Alexander's goals because one less clan to worry about.
Mm-hmm. And the Bruja were one of the strongest clans, so they were given permission,
leaving them
embrace.
Leaderless, left them literally disorganized.
Yeah.
Who's in charge? I don't know. Somebody needs to make a decision. You.
which left them with 2, with Batia and Iskra.
Right. And Iskra didn't know anything to start with.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
So they definitely took advantage of neonates who weren't going to know what to do, and did manage to rally and essentially save the city from a big problem. So
Right. Yeah.
Right, or at least save the prince from a bigger problem.
Yeah. He's a little pissed with Petrov because there's things that wasn't brought to his attention. So
well, and Petrov, I could see where Petrov might not A, want to bother the prince with something trivial, or B, not have enough proof about what's going on, because he was staked as well. So it kind of was like, now he's got to play catch up.
Yeah,
and from my end,
exactly.
It's like, wait, how long have I been out? A year, 2 years? What the heck? And what's going on?
That was more Petrov's thing, is he wasn't around for a lot of this, so he was hearing things secondhand, and
who do you trust, right?
Yeah,
right. And how do I verify what's being said to me?
Right.
It's one thing if I say, oh, there's gangrel and werewolves in the mountains. Okay, how do I prove that?
Right.
Well, the gangrel attack, that's one thing, but werewolves is another. And, does Petrov have the resources to investigate that stuff?
There's always neonates you can send out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's a couple of us, but, and like he could, okay, well, let me ask the Nosferatu. They know a lot of things, but does he want to pay that price to find that out? Does he want to have them in his debt or be in debt to them? And that's not always good either.
Yeah.
He's a
Right.
Lasombra. I don't know how well they get along with the Bruja, but there's only three of you.
3 right now.
So yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
Wow.
yeah, he's holding the bag and he's like, what do I do with this?
Yeah, pretty much.
And
So
oh,
one more question,
sure.
unless
Yeah.
go ahead, finish your thought.
No. Go ahead.
No, okay. So Patia and Katerina are lovers.
Mhm.
Is this considered acceptable in vampire culture? Iskra doesn't care. Iskra's like, fine, that's cool, whatever. But
At that time, probably
mhm.
no, because
Yeah.
the church and all that.
Right.
Now, Siren Child do develop different relationships.
Yeah.
They probably would have been. They kind of just let it slide. Now, Alexander would have been, oh, that's
Oh,
against
yeah.
blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But overall, no, they probably would have allowed it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Simply as a sire-child bond.
Yeah, that
And
grew to a
Well, it'd
different
be easy
level.
enough to hide that. I mean, people in
yeah,
real world have hidden that,
Exactly.
yeah.
So,
Exactly.
The powers that be would have simply permitted it and possibly even used it as an example of look what happens when you go too far. Like
Well,
and yeah. Well, and I'm talking like if you drink, the blood bond thing. I think
hmm
that's still a thing in this game. So
yes.
like if
Yep.
you drink from each other too much,
hmm
that bond gets reinforced. And it clearly,
Yeah.
Praetor was like the minute he saw them, like yeah, they've been drinking from each
Yeah.
other
And
way too much.
and Patia is completely bound to her sire.
Yeah,
oh
that's what
yeah,
I figured.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that
entirely.
was
yeah,
Yeah.
that
why
was like
she's.
she can't resist, she can't disobey. She's
Yeah.
pretty much,
Yeah.
mentally like
Yeah.
enslaved.
Once.
And Praetor saw that and was like, "Nope,
Yeah.
she's done."
Once. One.
Took him
One.
about 5 seconds.
Once she had some time for some clarity, she realized how she had neglected Iskra, and that's why she was so remorseful at the end. So because
Right. Right.
Iskra was loyal the whole time, she was
Yeah.
angry a couple times, but she never said, "What the hell with you? I'm leaving town or whatever."
I'm gonna do what I want.
Well, yeah, no, exactly, and I think, and that's why Patia was remorseful at the end, because
Yeah.
she had kind of kicked her to the side,
Right.
So,
Yeah. Iskra kind of felt homeless for a while,
hmm
and
yeah, yeah,
bonded with the Codier
yeah,
a bit
Yeah.
more. But
yeah.
I think
Well, that Praetor definitely
Iskra had.
saw that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Iskra had lost her sister, who was like her best friend. So she's thinking, okay, so that time frame where she had no idea who Patia's sire was,
Right.
she kind of got why Patia was like crying a lot, because she'd been through that, but not as a vampire, but that kind of thing. And
Well,
so she figured, well,
and if Patia had already been bound when that loss occurred, that would have been devastating to her emotionally and
yeah.
mentally because of that cutoff. Like, oh wait, it's gone. Like, what do I
Yeah.
do?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
And
player knowledge versus character knowledge.
Yeah,
and
character. Yeah, I mean, I think Iskra just took it as, well, of course you're sad. You lost someone you
Lost
love.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
and there were definitely some roles made that kept the Bruja in check. They rolled poorly sometimes, and because there were some times they were just like, let's just kill him now. So yeah, there were some roles that went badly in some cases, and good
Praetor.
and good enough. And honestly, the characters impressed the elders with their restraint, with their wisdom, in that hey, we can't just go lopping off heads here. We gotta we gotta follow the law. I mean,
Well, that was all Praetor.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
left alone, Iskra would have just shredded him.
yeah,
Right,
but,
which
yeah.
I was hoping to be that kind of counterbalance to her emotional,
Mhm.
like, let's just do it all and forget the consequences. And Praetor's like, no, we always have to think about the consequences.
Consequences, as long as I'm rich.
Yeah, exactly. Mr. Daffy.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Yeah, Iskra would have. There would be nothing left of
Right.
him
Right.
if she
Yeah.
had the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I as a player, I saw that Iskra was easily going to be that kind of character. So I'm like, all right, I should counterbalance that by being the stoic resolve and calm, cool, and collected. That's not to
Right.
say that you can't make Praetor angry.
Right.
Once he found out what Turville did, he was pissed off, but he wasn't
Mhm.
going to let that control his actions. That's how he is, and That's how he was brought up to be. Was think
Mhm.
first, act second, whereas
Right.
Bruja tend to do it the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's just, like we did in the last episode that, Iskra was this like really innocent thing. Anything you told her, she believed, she followed,
Yeah,
and it carried over into her vampire life with not being able to look at crosses and stuff like that. So, given
yeah,
the opportunity to really let loose, she would have. She
yeah,
I
kind of did,
exactly.
you know?
I
And I didn't want to be like I didn't want to attempt to rein her in,
Hmm.
but it said
It
just
wouldn't have worked.
here's well no, but
It
it
would
said
not have worked.
give her the solid advice and then be
Hmm.
like, all right, here's the information, you deal with that, or you try to understand like
Hmm.
here's what's going to happen if you do, kind of
Hmm.
indicate like what the consequences will be and are you willing to pay that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
she
Hmm.
was and she wasn't depending on the situation, or reason then let her calm her red soul as it were.
I think part of her, this was payback for what happened to
Oh
her
yeah,
clan. Part of it was
yeah.
that, and she didn't care what Turville was going to say.
Well,
And
yeah, and Praetor
mhm.
was like, by the law, yeah, he deserves a chance to speak, but it was unlikely Praetor would be convinced because Praetor had already made up his mind that this guy was going
Right,
to lie through his
right.
teeth. No matter what he said, he was going to lie to save his skin. Uh,
Hmm.
and the fact that uh, the prince didn't remove the stake was kind of a shock to Praetor, but it also relieved him. Like, okay, good, I don't have to like be influenced. I've already made my decision, and
Hmm.
boom, done.
Right, right.
hey,
Yeah.
you never know what a turtle might have said.
True. And
He
Praetor
probably
will
had a lot
never.
of things to say.
And
Well,
and now we'll
but
never know.
pra- yeah,
Right,
well, but as far as Praetor is concerned, he was going to say anything to save his sorry behind,
right, right.
and that would have led anything he would have said would have just been tainted by that, and so there was no point in his mind of listening to it
Hmm.
because you would not know what the truth would be. It would be whatever he spun at the moment to save his life.
Hmm.
And maybe later on we might have learned the truth, but at this point there
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
Praetor was angry enough to be like, nope, if I'm getting this moment. I briefly considered offering it to Petrov, but I'm like, no, Praetor's mad at him, he's going to take out his vengeance on
Hmm.
him, and
Right.
whoop, done.
Petrov
If he
Petrov
figures
actually
out things later, then that's fine.
Petrov
Hmm.
actually would have declined and offered it to you.
You'd have to do
I
it
kind of
anyway.
figured. Yeah, I kind of figured, but
Yeah,
Praetor would have given him the chance
yeah,
because he was one of the victims.
yeah.
If Katerina had been there, he would have also offered it to her, but she wasn't there, so that's kind
She
of like, all
wasn't
right, no big.
interested. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I don't know if she wasn't
She was
interested, but she
she was
wasn't
done.
invited.
Oh, maybe she
Yeah,
wasn't invited. Yeah.
Katerina was not
Yeah.
invited
Ah,
because
okay.
things might have gone differently if Katerina had been there.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and she was purposely not invited.
Okay.
They kept it as this is a child sire kind of thing, you know.
right. Which
So
Hmm.
technically she wouldn't have been involved in,
right,
even though she
Right.
was one of the
yeah,
victims in the situation.
yeah,
If Sergei wanted to keep it like this is a child sire thing that we need to resolve, great.
Hmm.
Turville's the one responsible for my creation. Turville was at the heart of this conspiracy, even if he wasn't, 100% in on it, maybe 20 or
Hmm.
30, but he was involved. And, Praetor's pretty mad, like, you've condemned me to this life for no other reason than you needed a body. And so I'm kind of torqued at that.
yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. It does. And I think
Yeah.
with Iskra, like, yeah, if you left her alone, Turville would be in pieces.
Yeah.
But I think part of her just like there was that moment where she's like, "This guy did this to the grandsire of the Bruja," you know, and it was just like, Iskra seeks revenge kind of thing, and
Yeah.
she didn't kill him because I think somewhere in the back of her mind, she thought bringing him back in some resemblance of alive. I mean, we're all dead, right? But might impress Patia and Katerina, and maybe they'd like her again. You know.
Yeah. I think that's kind of a personally, if you would ask Praetor what she thinks between what her chances are, he would give you
Mhm.
like none. Patia and Katerina are like they're too locked in each other, and that's the
Right.
downside of the blood bond thing. I mean, Patia is completely
Right.
bound to Katerina.
Right.
She's toast
Yeah.
as far
Yeah,
as
well,
he's
I mean,
concerned.
Iskra kind of understood that, early on when Katerina came back, the two of them were like embraced underwater in that little
Yeah,
Roman bath thing, a lot. So
yeah.
she
Well, and
she had
once,
the idea. I mean, Iskra had a couple of years at least, maybe 5 years or so, where
mm,
everyone around her was female. So it wasn't like people
yeah,
didn't do things, but
yeah.
except, yeah, I mean, like all of the acolytes were girls. So, I mean, it
Mhm.
didn't bother her. She could see what was going on and she didn't feel neglected by that emotion, She
Right.
just kind of felt shut out a bit for a while and thought, well, it'll blow over, like
Yeah,
they were, you lose the one you love and then you get them back, of course,
yeah.
Yeah.
When Praetor walked into that bathhouse and he was like, "Oh, so that's how they are." Okay.
Yeah.
And so it's like cuz I don't think he'd ever seen them together before. And then like,
You weren't
okay,
allowed to.
this is how yeah, exactly. I wasn't allowed to.
Yeah.
And I see why like Praetor understands from like, okay, this isn't even like kind of permitted among regular society, and
yeah.
it's sort of frowned on in Canaanite society too.
Yeah.
And then when they start talking and he sees the reactions, he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
This is not where I want to be, and I'm going to get
Yeah.
out of here as quickly as I can."
Yeah.
not
And,
not for like the sex thing or anything. That wouldn't he wouldn't have cared about that. But it's just like no, these two are going to be totally wrapped up in each other and not really care. So
Yeah.
he doesn't want
Yeah.
to be any part of that.
Right.
generally, no one was allowed to enter there
Right.
outside Bruja, because
Right.
there was one scene where Iskra brought Hildegard, and they were
And
pissed.
that didn't go well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I chalked that up to Bruja Ventru clashing.
right.
It was
It
like
Yeah,
was.
her
some of it
clan was
was
It
some of
was.
it was that. Yeah, that
yeah.
was when Iskra and Hildegard went walking back to, I think it would have been the brothel in the slums where we were at, and that's when Hildegard mentioned about her sire.
Yep. Poor.
Where we know she killed him, but beyond
She
that,
said
nothing
so.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we know things were not
Well,
going well for her, and that's
my
she
my
didn't
guess
say.
is she did something worse than just killed him.
I don't know. I don't
I
know.
suspect she diablerized him, if that's still the word they'd use.
That is what happened.
Yeah, she
Oh,
did more than just kill
Yeah.
him. There'd be a
yes.
reason why that she would be fearful, because
She,
under the right circumstances, killing your sire is permitted.
yeah.
But diablerizing your sire is
Yeah.
a whole other
Yeah.
animal.
Without getting too heavy, I mean, she
Mhm.
was abused by him before
Right.
Yeah,
before she was embraced.
yeah,
Oh,
Um,
that
yeah,
yeah,
Iskra was never told that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I was
yeah.
trying
But
not to.
that's
I was
yeah,
trying
that's
not
the
to
reason.
dwell on that too much, but yeah, there was a
Hmm.
history there.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
then he picked her to be his immortal love slave,
mhm,
and that broke
Mm.
her. And then she not only kills him, like final death kills him, she diablerizes him, which is
mhm,
worse.
yeah,
And then when the powers that be come looking for her, like, no, you don't get to do that.
yeah, yeah,
We don't care what happened.
yeah.
Yeah.
She basically forged her letter from the Prince of Hamburg as like her introduction to
Mm,
Oh,
Sophia.
wow.
And at some point the whole coterie had pissed off Alexander, and he sent a little bird to Hamburg to start investigating her. So when Praetor said to you that there was somebody coming from Hamburg, he wasn't lying. That he had found out that somebody was coming from Hamburg to look for Hildegard.
Wow.
And another thing about her,
Hmm.
you guys never got to see her feed.
Right. Yes. Iskra
yeah,
even said, do you not know how? I mean, what do you you
Her,
yeah.
remember?
And the
her,
Venture had that limitation, but
mhm.
we never found out what her limitation was.
Right. Right.
She could only feed from sleeping children.
Oh, see,
Wow.
that would not have gone well with Praetor.
Yeah,
He'll feed on sleeping people, but not children.
only
That's kind of where he draws the line.
and only children based on her abusive past. Um, there was a couple scenes where she was always at the church looking in at the children.
Oh,
Yeah.
so she can only feed from abused children,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that made it really hard for her.
Yeah. So she was always looking at the children as she saw them as free. They were
Yeah.
essentially orphans, singing for
Hmm.
for the church, but they had more freedom than she did. So
Yeah.
she kind of always kind of longed to be free, and when she would sneak out, that was one of the places she would go is to the orphanage to feed on the children. I did have some plans on if you guys had really, really wanted to find out and have one of you follow her and catch her in the act.
Well, if
And
she went towards the church, Isker couldn't have gone there.
well, yeah, exactly.
You know,
But
when
And Praetor wouldn't have cared.
right,
I mean, it would
right,
have been like if once he knew he was Ventru, I think he would have known that. Oh well, I know the Ventru have this little thing where they have to feed on certain
yeah,
things.
yeah,
And if Hildegard didn't want to tell him, he looked at it like, well, that's fine. You keep your secret. I don't
yeah,
care.
yeah,
It's not a big deal to me. But no, like if he had found out, that would have been like, oh no 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 no, we have to take care. That's a problem.
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I didn't want to linger on it too much. I just kind of
Yeah.
let
Hmm.
enough out there to be don't ask.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So
well, and that
Yeah.
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah,
But
yeah,
but that's the Ventru also typically guard that as a secret because then you can kind of restrict where they feed.
yeah,
And if you keep the right source away from them for too
yeah.
long, then they get kind of like they go crazy.
She
So
she really wanted to tell Iskra, but just thought that knowledge was just too much to share. She just,
Uh,
was just like she, mentioned one thing and then, but anything else, she was just like no, because to her she was a monster.
oh
She,
wow.
that
Praetor
Yeah.
would have agreed.
yeah, yeah, well, yeah, unfortunately, yeah, she was,
Yeah.
she was pretty monstrous, but she just couldn't reveal that. So
Yeah. That makes sense though. People
yeah,
that have been through some shit don't generally want to
yeah,
talk about it, even if they
right.
want to
Yep.
talk about it. Hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, so that's
Yeah.
why I just kind
Hmm.
of kept it, you know, you know, like that. I thought
Yeah.
that
And
was,
and Isker was oblivious. I mean,
and that's fine, and that's fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it worked out fine. So that's what,
Praetor was less oblivious, but he just didn't care. It
yeah,
it would have been like, oh, Ventru, yeah, I know sort of
yeah,
what you have to go through,
yeah,
and if you don't want to volunteer that, okay, I
yeah,
understand that.
yeah.
Mm.
So no worries.
Okay.
But yeah, there would have been a worry had he found out.
Yeah, yeah,
That would
um,
that would have offended him highly.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Um, so that is it for Miss Hildegard.
Yeah.
Anything else? I mean, you guys can always ask me later, but
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've been asking a
just for
lot.
the
I'm
people
trying
watching the
to think.
videos, I like to.
yeah.
We'll try to
I don't
wrap
have
it up.
Yeah.
anything off the top of my head though. Honestly, I mean, Praetor. I wrote the background for Praetor, so I know where he came from. I
Hmm.
know all those answers.
Yeah.
He was actually a guy named Isaac, for Jen's sake,
Yep.
Oh.
who was he was a grave digger for a church.
Yeah.
That's why he
Oh
was so
wow.
strong.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hmm. That makes sense. That makes
Praetor.
sense. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Praetor needed and he had like he was old enough that his parents wouldn't miss him. Like he got shuffled off to the church to work for the church.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so, but Praetor, once he got embraced by Turville, who was from someplace else, he got embraced
Yeah.
somewhere else,
Yeah.
and brought him along as his child, and then
Yeah.
presented him as, oh, here's another vampire I'm responsible for. I found him, blah blah blah. Told the whole story of him being a Praetorian guard that he dug up by accident,
Yeah.
all
Mm.
made up. So,
Hmm.
player knows that Turville lies his ass off about
Hmm.
everything he can. uh, the
Yeah.
character had to slowly find out that
Yeah.
basically Turville couldn't be trusted with anything, which Tom did excellently.
Thank you.
He
Yeah.
let it come out
That's good.
slowly. Like Turville will say and do anything to cover himself or protect himself,
And
and it took him a while for Praetor to realize that.
and and the rats you came across occasionally, those were Turville.
Hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I figured that was
Yeah,
Turville.
that was Turville.
Okay.
Yeah, he probably learned some sort of shapeshifting from the gangrel.
Hmm. Oh
So
wow. Maybe
yeah. No, I
that
mean I don't
explains a
know. That,
lot.
No, that
Oh
was
or he or
wow.
he
no.
did or he did the animalism
It
thing
was
where he
animal.
controls the rats.
It was
It could be
it was
that. Yeah.
animalism. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
animalism. So
So
Yeah,
it's a
because
power
like
most of the
wow.
Nosferatus don't deal with much. because they're like, oh, I can be strong and I can be invisible, but they control rats and or animals, wolves,
Yeah,
etc.,
yeah.
just as easily as some of the other clans, like the Gangrel.
You remember
I don't-
you remember his pet, Weasel,
yeah,
Marty.
yep,
Right.
yep, yeah,
Yeah.
Yep,
which
yep.
is a throwback to another character of mine.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. It was a
One of the first
Tremere that
characters I
Matt.
made was a
Yeah.
Tremere wizard, Marty Carter. Damn glad to meet you.
Everybody hated him because he was weaselly.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, but
So
the
Well,
that
thing
made
with the
you got
rats, I mean, go
yeah.
ahead, go ahead.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, nobody. No,
Okay.
I like. The way I look at it was Turtle probably never stressed the animalism aspects simply because that was a way for him to, okay, if he doesn't know about this or doesn't do anything with it, then he can't find a
Yeah.
way for me to, like,
Yeah.
he can't figure out that it's me. That would have, it's made a
Mm,
smart move that, and I
yeah.
did, like, as a player, I'm like, animalism can be fine, but we're in a city. The only thing I'm going to control is rats. And eventually, I saw the character eventually maybe learning that later on down the road. Uh, as one of the Nosferatu powers, but it wouldn't have been something he would have started with. I gave him no animal ken and like no real charisma or manipulation, which most of those abilities revolve around. So yeah, he would have not been very
Yeah.
good at it, even if he had it. But Turvel, yeah, lots of manipulation and a few dots of animal ken, and boom, animalism
Wow.
goes through the roof.
Right. Wow. See, that just makes, in the beginning of it when the so-called militia, with the torches
Yeah,
and stuff were like going around the slums.
killing the
And
rats.
well, they were like fighting with people and whatever.
Hmm.
And we decided that Iskra would be the one to talk to him because she was pretty, and and she made up all of these lies about who she was and how she was related to her sister and
Hmm.
her cousin, which was Stefan, and
Yeah.
all of this. And early on, there was a point where we knew that Hildegard was looking for a servant or a ghoul, and found one, went into an alley with him, and I was trying to distract the other kid that was there, and we hear all this rustling, and he's like, oh, I'm going to go check it out. I'm like, oh, you better not. So I start walking, and I hear the rustling. I'm like, oh, there's rats in here. We need to leave. This place has just got so many rats. There's like a plague of rats. And then towards the end, when the rats kind of ran through the town and ran by, and whoever Iskra was trying to, you know, haul off the trail of what was really going on, she said, I told you there's a plague of rats.
And that was Turvel doing his thing.
Yeah,
But
she
yeah,
didn't
we
know
wouldn't
at
have paid
all.
much.
She had no
Yeah,
idea.
would not have paid any attention to it. It was just a fortuitous window dressing circumstance. I was like, oh, look,
Yeah.
there's actually rats here.
And that was how a lot of times he was keeping tabs on things.
Yeah,
You
because nobody pays attention to the rats,
right,
especially in the Dark Ages.
Right.
exactly,
It would have been pretty common, but
exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, but she had him convinced that two of them
rats
had
were a
actually
plague.
gotten bitten by a rat and should go home. And
Yep.
and I think Hildegard had a lot of persuasion on that as well. So
Yeah,
and that is where the name of that episode came from, rats.
hmm
Well,
yeah.
well,
something like that.
and,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you noticed that all the episodes are named after songs.
I knew some of them were,
Okay.
but I didn't catch it all, I'm
Yep,
sure.
all
I'd
of
have to
them.
think about it again.
All of
Uh-huh.
them came from song titles. That after I would watch an episode, I would kind of think about what the episode, kind of what happened, things that
Hmm.
might have stood out, and that's where I came up with names. Now, this episode, All Secrets Known, I was using, it's an Alice in Chains song, and I've been keeping it since the very beginning for the last episode. So
Oh,
just
neat.
just the name alone,
That's cool.
so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yep,
Yeah.
that's
All
me.
right.
Wow.
Yep.
I got nothing else.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's all.
Alrighty.
I think
Okay.
that's all.
Well, Jen, do you have anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I'm the host of the Shattered Soulstone podcast. It's at shatteredsoulstone.com. New episodes come out every week where I talk about all the Diablo games that are relevant in that particular week and whatever shenanigans Activision Blizzard King is up to, and sometimes other stuff as well. Shows last about half hour, 45 minutes. You can find it again at shatteredsoulstone.com.
Okay. And again, this is the last episode for Sofia by Night. We are still continuing with Blood in the Water.
Yes.
And also looking at a hunter game at some point, and possibly a superhero game, which I'm hoping to have both of my players involved with at some point, depending on scheduling. But other than that, I'm hope everyone's enjoyed the series.
Oh yeah.
Remember to give us a like and subscribe if possible. And until next time, keep your fangs clean. Good night.